Hi, and welcome to this week's podcast episode of Web3 Compass. In this episode, I talk with Peter Holzer, the CEO of the blockchain software development and consultancy Byterio, about his entrepreneurial background, his research on the Lightning Network, blockchain and privacy, the daily life as a developer, NFT projects, DAOs, blockchain use cases, and much more. So enjoy the episode. He has 6 years of experience in software development, 6 years in B2B sales experience, and 4 years Web3 and blockchain know-how. Today he runs Byterio, a Web3 software development and consultancy company. Welcome, Peter Holzer.
Hello, Sebastian, and hello to the listeners. I'm glad to be here and to tell my story and give you some insights.
Are you ready for the episode?
Yes, I am.
Perfect. So I checked your LinkedIn, and one of your first positions in your career was B2B sales. And can you maybe tell me a little bit more about your experience there and what lessons you learned?
Sure, yes. So right after schools, I was in a technical school before. I started to be an account manager and later on also a key account manager for semiconductors. We simply bought stuff in Asia and sold them in Europe and in Austria. And I was also responsible for the business in Austria. It was a German-based company. It was a small company in Austria because we were only 2 people. And I think 3 months or 6 months after I've joined, the colleague has left, and so I was alone. I was 19, sitting in a company in Austria alone and having, I think 3 million of revenue responsibility. And then they gave me a car and they gave me much trainings and so on. And it was a great learning curve to fell into cold water and to learn all the stuff and be responsible for money and for revenue and so on. And so, yeah, I learned really a lot. I think also personally, a lot about, personal skills, about responsibility, about, simply not being able to run away or to ask somebody else because I was alone. So I have to, manage the business.
It sounds a little bit like an early version of dropshipping.
Yeah, basically not, because we got the stuff to a center in Munich, and from there we sold it again. It was also a big business, and it started to 1970, I think, or 1972 or something, and there were about 30 to 40 people, when I remember correctly. And yeah, so it was a classical semiconductor distributing business. So as I said, the company got contacts to companies in Asia, and where they had no distributing partner here in Europe, and we were most of the times the only company that was selling this stuff, also from these respective companies, and so we also had some kind of an head start concerning others, because this was unique for us.
And your selling skills during your time as a career, would you say it has helped you, this initial experience in sales?
It finally kickstart these skills, because before that, as I said, I was in a technical school. We learned more or less nothing related to sales or also not to business. So you can imagine I was 19, started in a new company in Vienna with 2 people, and the one guy left, and so I was alone and had to learn everything basically on my own, or of course with the help of the company, but they were not sitting beside me, so I have to learn a lot on my own, and therefore also sales, because this was the main part of my job, acquiring companies or getting in contact with responsible people and telling them about our stuff, making prices, making conversation about quantities, and also I don't know the English translation right now, but price groups. So for more amount, you get a cheaper price and so on. So it was tough times, and therefore I learned really a lot here.
That sounds great. And during your time, I think, in sales, you also founded a video advertising platform, right?
Yes, right. So to be honest, I was not fully mentally loaded there. So I had a little bit of capacity left. As well in my mind and also in my time. So I started to think about what can I do. So the startup world I was very interested in. It was 2011 when I came up with some idea about a video advertising platform. So basically the idea was that people join this platform. You can imagine of it like, or think of it like YouTube. So there are videos placed, which consists of only advertisements, and people should watch it fully. So they should not be able to skip it or something. They should answer 1 or 2 or 3 questions after the video, and then they get paid for it. So this was the core idea. And I thought about, hey, this would be maybe cool. And so let's start trying it. So I went to a company who developed the platform for me, because back then I had not the development skills. So I found luckily a cheaper company, because I also had offers for, 10 times the price that I paid. And so we developed this, I think, for almost 1 year. And my way of doing it was, it should be perfect first, and then going out and asking if it's interesting. So this is the major mistake that one can make with a startup, I think. And so, we developed it 1 year. I went out, and then I asked a lot of companies to give me their videos, so advertisement companies or agencies. And they said, okay, how many users do you have? And I said, no user at the moment. Please give me your video, then we can maybe get some users. And so this was the classical, the English translation for this chicken egg problem. So what comes first? And I could not get started with it. So I was at also very big advertisement agencies, and they also, during these conversations, I gained a lot of, I collected a lot of ideas how the platform could be improved. So maybe not paying them with money, with euros, for example, but paying them with vouchers from these companies. So in order for the revenue to get back to these companies directly, and so on. I collected really a lot of ideas, and then I was thinking, okay, there's now 2 options. You can go back to this company again and say, okay, we want to change this and that and pay another thousands euros for this, or you better learn how to do it on your own. And this was finally then the starting point for quitting my job to study computer science at Vienna University of Technology. It was 2014 then, because also not only, so there was several reasons, but one of the reasons was also I have a little bit of doubts that the platform or the idea of the platform is really needed or can solve a problem. So because it was really top down, I have not asked somebody if they would ask for such a platform. I simply thought this could be cool or useful. So it was more a top-down approach than a bottom-up approach. And so also I was adopting the idea. And then there was the scenario that I would have to go to this company again and pay thousands, or I don't know how many euros for redoing the work or for adapting the work. And then when I adapted, it's also unclear that it would have been successful then. And maybe there is a second, third, fourth, fifth round and so on. And so this was really somehow a time where I thought, okay, stop here, learn it, and later you can come up with your own ideas and can try as many as you want to.
Understandable. So one thing which I took away from this is always go minimum viable product first and then improve it. And what I also thought about when you told me about this company is to use it, for example, for market research. For example, to test like advertisement at a sample of people. And then to, for example, get better advertisement. Because in the last days I checked out, so I of course want to grow my podcast audience. And I have a problem to grow it over the traditional channels. So over Spotify, over Apple Podcasts, because I don't have a lot of organic growth. And what I started now is to upload my videos on YouTube, and I also switched to a video format. And now I listened like a podcast episode about, I think from Noah Kagan. He's the founder of AppSumo, how he grows. For example, he had somebody like an expert also from an advertisement company for YouTube. And what they did, they are very extreme. They sometimes take snippets from the video and different thumbnails. So just very few snippets. And then they run Facebook advertisement ads. And based on these ads, they create like the perfect title, perfect thumbnail, and the perfect hook for people to get into the video. I thought, wow, this is on the one hand, I think it's a little bit crazy, but also very interesting how they do it. Also very interesting if you would be like a big company, maybe consumer goods company, if you of course test your they probably do it already, but to test like your advertisement before you for example broadcast it on TV.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, this was also some kind of an idea, I think, of one or two basically companies where I was a guest. They said, okay, this could be a research platform or something. But I don't know, I was not really happy about the idea to just, under quotes, be a research platform. I want to be a big platform. But yes, in the end, it was no platform because there was no user. Yeah.
Sure, understandable. So did you made also revenue? Have you been able to create like a revenue model for your platform?
No, there was no chance to get any video. So I really was not able to get any video from any client, and so I also was not able to get any customers or users because without any content, nobody will join, and so I could not get the wheel spinning, so to say.
You talked about your time in university. So you studied then, I think it's software and information engineering. You did a bachelor and a master's degree, right?
Right, yeah.
And how would you reflect on your studying time? Was it something where you thought this was exactly what you wanted to do? Or have you, or do you think more about it like Ivory Tower or something like that?
Yes, there was, I think, I somehow run around a little bit in terms of segments that I was interested in. So right after, or in school, I was interested in technical stuff. Right after school, I was, as I said, or as we just have discussed, I was working in sales, and there I also somehow gained a little bit of interest in terms of marketing and in terms of management. I did also some kind of I think this was besides the startup attempt, or maybe also after it. I did a 2 years course on marketing and management at Wi-Fi, and which is a school for adults, I would say, right? And then I also came back to technical stuff, and I thought about, okay, I was sitting there with a startup or with a project that did not work out. I was a little bit unhappy with my job, and so I thought about what's next. And so studying was, I think, 1 or 2 years in my head back then, and it would. So I thought about it would mean to quit my job because it's a full-time commitment doing a study. At least I wanted to do it full-time, and it was a really hard decision because I earned good or more than the average back then, because sales is also paying well. I had a really great car which I could use without any restrictions, also in private time, and it was great. But it somehow, I was 24 or 25, and I was hungry, and I'm still hungry, and so I thought about, okay, this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life, or also not for the next years, and so I was willing to learn, and so I thought about, hey, why not learning computer science, or basically software development, with a way broader basis. So because of course you can learn software development with YouTube and so on, or Udemy courses or whatever. But I was interested in learning really the basics and having a great education, and so I decided for the study. The first 2 years I was a full-time student. It was very, very tough at the very beginning because I can remember in the first winter, so after 2 or 3 months in mathematics, I was nearly at dropping out because I was away from school 6 years, and it was really hard, and there were a lot of smart people, and it was really hard to catching up with them. But I can remember there was a point in time where it felt like I'm crossing the point of, I don't know, so this really hard point, and after it gets way easier, and from then it as I said, it went way easier, and I started 2 years full time, and then I also was a part-time software engineer. I did my bachelor degree in IoT, basically with a IoT topic. Started a master studies right after it in terms of distributed computing, and there I also focused then on blockchain finally, and finished 2020 with a master's degree and did some research in Bitcoin Lightning. So I did a Bitcoin Lightning network analysis with respect to privacy. And I learned a lot about blockchains, about distributed systems, about distributed ledgers, of course. And was very interested all the time in these cutting edge technologies.
You touched on a lot of very interesting points. So you talked about blockchain technology. And of course, I was wondering, what was your first touch point with blockchain technology? Or was it even during your time where you studied Internet of Things? Because I know there were, for example, I think around 2014 or something like that, 2015, also a lot of IoT companies which wanted to use blockchain technology, for example, to lock doors and stuff. Or what was your first touch point with crypto?
Yes, also with crypto, when you think of it in terms of internet money, I can remember there was a video on YouTube I watched. I think it was 2012. I think it was around the startup time, where they explained Bitcoin. But I was not smart enough to fully grasp it, and so I also did not buy anything. And then I also think it was 2015 or 16 or something, where it came up again, but only from a financial perspective. So in terms of high growth and high loss, of course. And finally, technically, I dove into it. I think it was 2017 or end of 16 something. And as you said, there was a lecture teaching us blockchain and smart contract security. And I can remember there was also a project we did in this course which had to do with IoT. I think it was broadcasting sensor data to the blockchain to make it transparent for others. So this was, I think, the use case when I remember correctly. So yes, as you said, in terms of IoT, it always was a famous architecture.
Very interesting. Also, I asked this question quite a lot when I talk to people. So what was your first touch point with crypto, or when did you fell into the rabbit hole? And I think these hype cycles, or of course these cycles, for example, the ICO hype, or in 2021 the NFT hype, or even before, it's often most people are getting pulled in during these cycles, because I think in the beginning, nearly for everyone, there's always like also an economic incentive where people have like fear of missing out, or they're also interested in making money. And after time, I think a lot of people drop out, they lose a lot of money, and other people might also lose money. Maybe they make money, but they stay because they are interested in the philosophy and also in the technology behind, for example, cryptocurrencies or distributed ledger technology.
Yes, exactly. So this happens many times when I also talk to people, and when we talk about, as you said, what was the reason for playing around with this topic, they always tell first they had a financial interest, and then they learned about the technology, and then they felt in love with the technology and with the use cases and with the opportunities and possibilities. Yeah.
And talking about your master thesis, I think it's called Payment Channel Network Analysis with Focus on the Lightning Network, right?
Exactly, yes, right.
And can you tell me more about what exactly you did there? You talked about privacy, but what can I imagine under your master thesis?
Tough question. I hope I can remember every detail, or at least the most interesting ones, because it's 3 years from now. Basically what we did, we researched the Lightning network. We also I basically modified also the LND client, which is a Go implementation of the Lightning network client, where we logged out a little bit of more data that was collected by the network or by the node of the network, and we then combined it with so I worked, I also was employed at this time at Austrian Institute of Technology, which was also highly engaged in this topic of crypto analytics and privacy stuff. And so they developed a method or basically a software tool where you could combine several unspent transaction outputs of Bitcoin to be grouped as one entity. Because they say when there's a stream coming from this direction and there's another money stream coming from this direction, and there are two unspent transaction outputs, and you, in another transaction, you use both of them for spending, again, money, and then it's assumed that these are the same persons, or is the same person, because you use the same, or you use two money streams for one transaction. And with this technique, we could group Lightning Network nodes to this, so to say, Bitcoin transaction streams, and therefore we somehow weakened a little bit the privacy, which is also some kind of an selling argument for the Lightning Network. So not only the speed, but also the privacy, because not everything is on chain. But with our, I would say, smart or good combination of two networks, and the details of two networks, we could somehow a little bit weaken the privacy. So this was it was not an attack, but we combined data in a smart or in an interesting way, so that we can find out a little bit more about those privacy or about this node who thought they are fully private.
Very interesting. And I currently think about that. I watched a video on YouTube where somebody was talking about like the Tor browser, and I think it's called Onion Network, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the video said, and I can confirm it because I'm not too deep into it, but it said that the NSA has so many nodes compromised in the Onion Network that after a period of 3 months or something like that, they know exactly who you are. Or they could know it, because they have too many nodes, they could track it back or trace it back to you. And I'm not sure if I fully understood your master thesis, to be honest, but is it in the same direction? So is it possible to track people in the network when you, for example, control a certain amount of nodes?
Good question. I think this could be possible, of course, because when you then combine data and you know, okay, money comes in at this node, I don't know, at this center or at this location in the world, and it goes out at this location of the world, because nodes also have locations, of course, because they have IP addresses and you can locate them. Yes, I think that's an interesting thought. I think you can then get way more information out of it than the intention was to do so. So yes.
I think also Toby Hoeneß, right, the alleged hacker of the DAO or Genesis DAO, they also have like strong evidence against him. So it's not fully proven, of course. I think, but Laura Shin, the author of the report and the book, she has strong evidence that he is the hacker of the DAO. I think he also had like a node which was named after his Twitter handle. So this was also quite interesting how they tracked him over Chainlink and how they identified all these transactions. And of course, privacy is also like a, how do you say, two-handed sword, right? So on the one hand, it's important to have privacy. On the other hand, you don't want that, let's say, ultra wealthy individuals use, for example, crypto as a possibility to avoid taxes. And then there's the next argument, and there are so many arguments. Other people say, okay, they don't need even cryptocurrencies. Currently, there are a lot of probably even legal structures which they could use with accountants and share companies. So yeah, quite. What do you think about this balance between privacy and maybe the negative effects of it for society?
Yeah, sure. As you said, it's always a double-edged sword. So I don't really know. So I'm standing more for self-empowerment. So I like to have control. And also, I love to have responsibility, because this is what comes with control. And I'm not more, I'm less on this side where I say, okay, I want somebody else, like the government, being in control of me. So if I would be able to choose my insurance situation, this governmental insurance, I would also choose to self-insure, because I want to have own responsibility for what I am insuring myself, and not having some kind of an one system fits it all. So this is not generally not really my way of thinking. So therefore, I also would say I would prefer privacy and self responsibility over some kind of what is it then? Preventing criminals, right? Because I would say
Yeah.
I have the responsibility to not get a victim. You know what I mean? So of course, when somebody comes to my house and gives me does me some hurt, of course I want some kind of a central authority to prevent me from this or help me then. But for situations where maybe I could have prevented when just putting a little bit more effort into this topic. So like not simply trusting every website that is out there, and falling into scams like this. As I said, I'm more on this side to having more self-responsibility. And I also want to add one thing to this DAO hacks story you told just, or you scratched the surface on. The question really is it a hack to use a smart contract in a way that was not the intention of the developers? Because it's like saying the law is also written and it has as a room for interpretation. And if you somehow turn the law towards your wishes, it's also okay. And I think the same is true for the smart contract. If the thing is developed and written and it allows to be hacked, because this is also what is somehow developed and written, and somebody makes use of it, why is this even a criminal act? I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Moreover, I did like a podcast episode also on this topic. And I mean, they even advertised like code is law, right? So this is like very sarcastic. So the founders of the Genesis DAO, of the DAO, they had written on their website, code is law. And then you have, for example, a programmer who uses this to code is law, right? So he is acting according to the law. And then after the things don't work out for the creators and, for example, all the investors, they change the law. And then they change the law, basically. And by changing the law, I mean, of course, the Ethereum fork. So they changed the law and revert this transaction. And if we are talking about blockchain technology and about all these ideas, I think it's also important to get this realistic view on a lot of these topics and to know, okay, what's reality and what might be like idealism, and probably, the truth is probably not the idealism. And I also like what you said about self-sovereignty. I think you could summarize it under this term, to be responsible for your own actions. Of course, I'm not sure. It's probably also quite political. Of course, you have to think about how is it for the masses. And if you look at like the FTX disaster or at all these other coins, should they be allowed? Shouldn't they be allowed? And I also have to say, FTX, I didn't saw it coming, so I didn't have them on my radar. I only saw like the coverage from the media, and they always had this very good story, like with the brilliant with this brilliant entrepreneur CEO based in America, regulated in the US, doing trading, and very smart from this how do you say it, also very smart parents who are basically professors at the top universities in the USA. And they had like a top team, and I didn't do any research. Of course, I think now more than ever, not your keys, not your coins is important, but also this thing. I think after a certain amount of money, it also gets dangerous, because I think one of the Ethereum founders, he said, I think 3 years ago or something like that, he's selling all his Ethereum because it became like a very big threat to him and to his family. Because of course, if you have all this money on let's say ledgers or something like that, maybe a discussion with no end.
For sure, yes. But also, as you said, so if as many people or if way less people would have their funds on a centralistic exchange, then the damage would not be as big as it was, right? So if the people would take over self responsibility and would have not to simply trust anybody or somebody, then the disaster would be way smaller. But yeah, it's how it is. People are somehow lazy, or maybe I don't know if you can say they are lazy, but they maybe they don't want to or cannot to understand the whole story and maybe make use of ledgers and all the stuff on their own, or they're afraid to mess things up and to lose the funds, and so they for sure leave them on central services. And of course, yeah, it's again here a double-edged sword, because it's laziness versus self-responsibility and higher risk of losing. Or I don't know, higher risk of losing, you also lose there, but you know what I mean? It's a trade-off.
Understandable. Maybe one question I also wanted to ask you as a developer is always this scenario: what will happen after the 21 million Bitcoins are mined? And I talk now with many people about this, also with the project lead of Peercoin, for example. Mm-hmm. And so my line of thought is the 21 million Bitcoins are mined. Let's not talk about, for example, the Lightning Network, just like Bitcoin. If the number of Bitcoin is not increased, somehow the miners have to pay their electricity bills, right? So what will probably happen is that the transaction costs will be higher, which would make the network less inclusive, or in other terms, it would make the network probably exclusive, and Bitcoin would never become probably, or in peer-to-peer electronic cash system, but moreover it would be exclusive. Do you think there would be like another fork, or the Lightning Network would gain more adoption, or what are your thoughts on this topic?
I mean, we have 100 years time until the last Bitcoin is mined, right? But I somehow think the train already has left the station, so that Bitcoin won't be some kind of a peer-to-peer cash system. I think, as many people say, I also think it's some kind of a store of value. And as you want to store value, then you don't want to transact them very often. So I think, or I can imagine that it's not a big deal if the transaction costs are, I don't know, 10x from this time transaction costs, because you don't want to move your digital gold around a lot of times. So you buy it and then you hold it maybe for years, or I don't know how much. Of course, in terms of peer-to-peer money system, transaction fees are a big deal. But as I said, I don't think this is the use case of Bitcoin. We don't see it since 10 years. It's not becoming a use case because of many reasons. And also, when people think it will raise in value, why would you spend your Bitcoin to buy something when you can simply spend your fiat money where you know for sure it will be less worth tomorrow? So it makes no sense to spend any Bitcoin finally. So as long as the prices are that volatile and people think of it like a digital gold or store of value, then I think it never will become a payment system. And I don't know if it needs to. Maybe this is a perfect use case also. So I'm thinking more in this direction, that it becomes a store of value. And I bought some of the Bitcoins since a few years, and I'm still holding it. So, and I have no plans to do something else with it, because I think in 5 or 10 years or whatever time frame you take, it will be worth way more than it is today. So no reason for me to spend any for buying goods, because I can take my euro for it.
Yeah, understandable. Like a digital form of value, and no electronic cash system. We probably have other cryptocurrencies for this.
Yes.
And now I finally want to talk a little bit more about your work nowadays. So I know that you're a self-employed software developer, and you also founded Bytero, right? And I wanted to ask, how does your day-to-day life look like, and are there any projects which you are very excited about?
Sure. Right after studies, I started to become a freelancer. So this was 2020. I simply started as a single person company or self-employed software engineer to develop client projects. At the beginning, I was also broad in terms of use cases. I developed IoT projects. I was working on a web user interface for a quantum computing system. I was working in classical web projects and so on. But I also had in mind that I want to focus myself on blockchain and Web3. And with the NFT hype from 2021, I finally did this. So I positioned myself as a Web3 developer because the term came up at this time, and somehow went out on LinkedIn and told everybody that I'm doing development services there. Then in 2022, it was 3 or 4 months from now ago, I refounded. So I simply transformed my single person company to a limited corporation. And I onboarded 2 people also in part-time that are helping me on client projects. And we are now fully focusing on Web3 and blockchain development for our clients. So this was classical NFT projects, as you can imagine. It are more complex Web3 distributed applications. I'm working with a startup in Sydney, for example. It's called Ethereum. We are working on bringing Web2 data to the metaverse, basically. So it's also some kind of a research component to figure out which technologies are used maybe in a few years. We are exploring digital identities. We are exploring how to maybe make or adopt the soul-bound token concept and so on. We are doing workshops, so we are exploring together with companies NFT and Web3 use cases. So we sit down together, simply think about the current situation of this company, where Web3 or Web3-like thinking can help them or their clients. And so we think about it, talk about it, we draft concepts, we implement MVPs and prototypes, bring it to version 1 and so on and so forth. So it's a lot about talking to people, exploring concepts, teaching or doing know-how transfer, and also developing, of course. Yes.
Very, very interesting. And a lot of things you're doing. So the first one, I think I checked your link also out. You had your own NFT project, right?
Yes, right.
And it was more like a test, right? Or do you still have like a community building up around it?
No. Yes, it was more like a test, or simply more like the case that we thought. A colleague of mine from studies time, who is also very interested in Web3 and blockchain technology, and we sat down together, and we saw a lot of NFT projects selling out in no time, and we thought, hey, we are 2 software developers, we can do technically the same. There's no thing with it. We simply do it, and we develop an NFT contract. It's called writingturtles.com. It's still online, the website, but the smart contract, of course, is also still online, but we have no active efforts at the moment. And the thing was, we simply thought we are 2 developers, we can do the same, but we had no marketing, no community building, no storytelling component in our team. So as I said, we were two software engineers who loved the technology, but who had no experience with building a community. And so this was then also the reason why the thing did not fly. Because nobody cared about us, of course, because nobody knew. And we tried to grow an own audience on Twitter, and we did giveaways, and we shouted around and so on. But we could not really get the thing started. And after a few months, of course, we also lost the interest and somehow the energy to further put some efforts in it, and then stopped somehow. And I now take it as a reference project, because I can say I have developed an own NFT contract, and with a minting website and so on, I can show it to people. For the graphics, for example, we hired a graphics designer on Fiverr, which did a great job. But he didn't know what he's doing, because then he would maybe have charged way more. So it was a really cheap graphics. And yeah, so the concept was turtles that are riding several boards, so skateboards, snowboards, hoverboards, and so on, with different backgrounds. So as it was famous back then, as having some kind of a 10K collectible project. We also had a gamification component. So our turtles had levels, or have levels, and you can you can merge two with the same level and gain one with a higher level, where the shell is also more evolved. Yeah, but this was also not a selling point. So I think it's all about community, about providing utility, as it is famous today, and we had none of them. So it was simply a collectible thing, or a thing to play around with. But I think for this we were maybe 3 to 6 months too late.
Yeah, but very interesting. I also checked out YouTube. I think the channel was named Hashlips, and I took the code. I also had like my pixel art. It's called Sprite, or I'm not sure how it's called. And I also tried it out. So I first just did like pixelated art, so like unique pieces, because I also paint and stuff. Then the other collection, I didn't publish it, but it was like, I think 999 jellyfish, also with the different tentacles and backgrounds and stuff. I was just interested to create like this generative art. But as you said, I think NFT projects, also last year I was quite involved in what is going on. They build like on the community, and also if they don't have like a utility, or let's say a higher reason, they die out. I think it can be a great tool to raise capital, for example, and to fund maybe like a startup, which then creates better value. And probably the best example is Yuga Labs with their Bored Ape Yacht Club and all the stuff they are doing. But to be also honest, I think it's a little bit like art, where you have like 99.9% of the projects just dying, and also having probably not the highest quality, just because they lack the experience, funding, and all this stuff.
Yeah. Now I'm fully with you. So we will see a lot of projects dying, or maybe they also have died already. Yeah, so in terms of NFT, what will be the use cases? I think it could be some kind of a branding branding or marketing instrument, maybe. Also maybe for ticketing or something. But to be really honest, I think the use cases are way less than we thought a few months ago. So because when you think about it, having a community simply because you have an NFT, I don't know, what is the value you are generating? So the question is always, which problem are you solving? And I don't know if many projects solve any problem. I don't know.
Yeah. I think some of them are just there to have like a vehicle, hype vehicle or something like that, to create like a sort of digital exclusivity, and to gauge the community, which I think you did a post, right, on LinkedIn, where you said, okay, well, isn't the use case or the idea of Web3 to be more inclusive? And what are NFTs doing? They are making things more exclusive, right?
Yes, this was a post a few days ago, I think, I thought about, because I see a lot of NFT projects, as you just mentioned, that are doing some kind of building exclusivity for some kind of people, and Web3 stands for inclusivity for everybody, and internet on the eye level and so on, at least in my understanding. And then I was asking myself, wait a little, is this not the opposite what here is going on? So I still don't know, to be honest.
Yeah, totally. I'm also not so sure. I think sometimes there are great use cases. I also saw like very, very complex projects where they use, for example, the NFT, which of course also had like an artwork attached to it on IPFS, and then you could use the NFT as a voting mechanism for decentralized autonomous organization, all that stuff. But I also have to say, with all these projects going on, I think some of these projects are just too complex. because they are like a little bit like nerd traps, where I think they are so complex, and if somebody would like to attack them, there will be probably like an entry point, because they have like a 10-step process to do some voting or something like that.
Yes, and with complexity there comes a security risk, and so yes, you're totally right. So especially also for the DAO topic, I'm very skeptical about if a DAO can really work out, because there are so many different business cases that needs to be implemented at the very beginning, and you don't even know about every of them. So I don't know if there is really a full functioning DAO out there completely, like it is the theoretical concept. Maybe there is a DAO, a part of a DAO for, as you said, a voting mechanism or something. But I don't know if there can ever be a really decentral autonomous organization.
Yeah, and I also did like a podcast episode about 11 things I'm critical about Web3. And what I think is always to compare like existing solutions, right? If you have, for example, a DAO, you could also just have like an association or something like that, like in club, student club, for example, or like club of people, which has like an official entry in by the notary of your country. And then you also have like some sort of, how do you say it, rules, like your articles of your club, how you want to vote, what are your processes and stuff. And then you have to go every year also to the notary. And I think you have to compare like a DAO to these systems, or maybe just take an NGO or something, or like that. Why do you need such a complex system? I think it's very interesting, and there might be some good use cases, but as so often, it's hard. Also, I think blockchain technology can have good use cases, but the same thing is with supply chains, and this is a topic where I do more research currently, because I talked, for example, to someone from SAP when I was at Berlin at a convention. And they did like also a supply chain solution. They said it was all blockchain based. Yeah, it was a very interesting project, but in the end, they didn't really need a blockchain. And of course, if I would have, for example, several stakeholders, and I had a big company like, for example, SAP being behind this, and I would trust this software company, it might not need like a blockchain solution. Or I think it's called Maersk with IBM. They also had like a supply chain solution, and they shut it down just a few months ago. And these are the things where I think, okay, you always have to evaluate. There are great use cases of blockchain technology, especially if you want to have like a trustless system. But of course, not all use cases need a blockchain.
Yes, and this is also one thing I was thinking about the recent weeks and months, so during this winter, because it's getting cold now, at least because you see a lot of projects are not coming or are delayed, and so this is at least my experience. We're doing still good, it's no problem, but we see that the opportunity pipeline is getting more dense, so the opposite of dense, this also somehow let me think about why is this maybe, and then I remembered basically that a blockchain is a system for an untrusted environment. And what if we don't have a big deal with trust? So because you trust your government, you trust your bank, you trust your health system, and so on, because you have your money at your bank and so on, and you're a citizen of your country. So maybe we don't have that big deal with trust, and so maybe we don't need a blockchain for all those scenarios. And I also think that when you take, 100 companies randomly, maybe only 10 or maybe less than 10% could perfectly make use of blockchain, and all the others not, because they don't simply have a use case for a blockchain system. So, and at the moment, we're trying with all energy to also convince all the other 90% to make use of blockchain, simply because the sake of the sake of it. So, yeah, I'm skeptical as well, even if I love this technology. But I think there are way less companies, and also what I said before, way less opportunities and use cases than we might think or might hope, basically. Maybe this is the thing. We hope to apply this technology for every situation, but doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's also what I'm thinking about a lot in the current days. Because also I compare it to existing solutions. Also, if you have, for example, I got like a request, I think, from a PR agency, from somebody of like a, it was like also they had a coin and it was like a peer-to-peer network and CDN, so content delivery network, decentralized. And I also looked at the downside. If you have, for example, a peer-to-peer CDN, and I talked to some very good engineers and also about scalability. And you have, I think people nowadays, and they are very critical about these big technology companies. Okay, and there are probably also things to criticize, but I think it was never been so easy to create like a company and to scale it than today, because when you just go to whatever architecture you are in, Azure, AWS, Cloudflare, whatever, you can basically buy storage. You don't have to buy like hard drive. You have no startup costs. And you can, and oftentimes they have specific startup incentives also on top. So I don't want to, of course, I also have to say disclaimer, I work for Cloudflare. So I work for one big US tech company. So I might be biased, but I don't want to let this influence the podcast. But I think there are also, people are often quite polarized, right? In the one corner or in the other. And it's hard to find like truth or the reality, because people are biased, and there are hardcore people on the peer-to-peer side, which say everything has to be peer-to-peer. But of course, you also have to think about what problems do you have if everything is decentralized. And I know it from Cloudflare. We also have public blog posts. We have 30 million websites on the network. Yeah, it's not every website you have on your network you want to have on your network to say it in this way. Yeah.
Yes, I think this is totally true. So a lot of people want to have a decentralization, just I think also because only the sake of it, but they don't want to have the downsides. And I think the downside is, of course, speed, because when a system is decentralized and distributed, then you have a lot of communication overhead, and this makes the network slow, or the system slow. And this is also what people don't want to have. It should be distributed, but it should be at the same speed as centralization. This simply don't work. And I think there will become a day in time where also the hardcore decentralization maxis understand that this simply does not work. So you cannot have everything at the same time. So it's a trade-off, like everything in life. And I think we should use decentralized systems like a blockchain for maybe important stuff, so for digital assets and so on. So I don't want to have the government the possibility to take away my money. And I think at least it's not the case with the current bank system, because or at least when you don't have a problem with a government. But so what I wanted to say is that I have no problem if I don't know, Facebook shuts me down, or at least maybe I would have a problem if LinkedIn shuts me down, because this is my lead generation machine there. But yeah, sure, it's a two-sided thing. So yeah, I'm not fully sure.
I think there are very interesting use cases in decentralized finance, because I'm doing currently this DeFi Talents program from the Frankfurt School Blockchain Center. And they have very, very interesting applications. And last year I was also at the Crypto Assets Conference, so also at the Frankfurt School Blockchain Center. And they had so many bankers and lawyers and consultants there. And I know, for example, with Ripple, with all the stuff is going on with Ripple, you have this, for example, Swift, and they built their technology initially in the 1970s. And I think they switch, of course, to like an IP-based system. And I'm also not an expert on how Swift works and what's the technology behind it. But I know that Ripple and is used by, for example, big corporations. I think it was used by Amex, also American Express. I think they still use it. And I think also, for example, JP Morgan, they have like a project which is called Onyx, and they are very interesting protocols, but they are so highly complex. I think it would then be a case for business, right? So where you have, for example, quantitative traders, and they do a lot of their transactions, they do it on these applications. I think especially when there will be like central bank digital currency, and of course this is a whole new topic, and we also have to talk about privacy here and stuff. But I think then these DeFi applications, also blockchain based, might be very interesting, because you could use Ethereum as like a layer 1 and build like DeFi applications for, and this is my imagination right now, for like this central bank digital currency. And there are so crazy things you can do. For example, flash loans. You can take like, I think, a nearly unlimited amount of money if you return it back in the same transaction. So you have very short time, and otherwise it will be cancelled. But you have like so much leverage, and it's stuff where I have to say, okay, I'm not an expert enough to fully grasp what is happening, but I think it, and especially in decentralized finance, and I don't mean all this Ponzi scheme thing where everybody has their own coin and stuff. But I think there might be very interesting solutions with smart contracts. Also, one talking about blockchain use cases, what I also thought is very interesting in the book The Network State, is like to have history on the blockchain, or to have like public knowledge on the blockchain, because these are things which seem so realistic. And as you said, right now we are trusting the state. But I know, for example, in the Western countries, we say, for example, other countries have rewritten their history. And they, for example, China, about some of their provinces. The history has been rewritten. But I would like to know, for example, if you could have like an archive or something like that, where you could go back in history, where you could go on the blockchain, and where you could definitely look up what happened, and maybe also not from one country, but from several countries, because then you have like a single source of truth, or however you want to call it. And maybe it's not even the truth in the moment, but you know what they stated. And right now, I think a lot of evidence, oftentimes also in the war, for example, in Ukraine, when they take prisoners, or when they, how do you say it, when they are hurting people to get out information and all this ugly stuff, people tend to burn like their traces or stuff like that. And I think it would be interested, might be the wrong word, but I don't have the better word in English. I think it could be a good use case to have like this knowledge on the blockchain. Yeah.
Yes, I would summarize it with the word data anchoring. So somehow making a hash of a data set and putting on blockchain to later be able to verify if this data was included at this time. So you can verify. So this is, I think, one of the use cases I can think of blockchain will be the technology for, and also what you said about financial assets or the financial world. So for maybe money, for store of value, for transferring assets. So could be also digitalized assets. So like apartments and flats and so on. Could be tokenized maybe, for example. So this could be use cases. I can think of it where we have a blockchain also in 10 years for it, because it makes the transaction faster. It makes the thing more transparent, and also nobody can, as you said, rewrite the history and so on. But for other use cases, I have hard times in really trusting that blockchain will be the solution for.
And I think these are very good words for the end of the interview. Maybe one question: if somebody wants to work with you, where can they best find you? Probably LinkedIn, right?
Yes, probably on LinkedIn, or use my Linktree link, which is linktr.ee/PHO, which stands for Peter Holzer, so my first both initial letters. And there everything else is linked, so LinkedIn, my website, my Enter Web3 website. So I have also a website for especially these Enter Web3 topics. So enter-web3.xyz, maybe easy to remember. And yeah, you can reach out at any time, drop me a line, ask me a question. I'm happy to answer it. In case you have any projects for Web3, blockchain, and all the other stuff, then let's talk, and I would be happy to work with you, maybe.
Perfect. I will link it in the show notes. Thank you so much, Peter.
Amazing. Thanks for having me, Sebastian. It was a pleasure to talk with you. Very nice conversation. And we will hear each other again.
Definitely. If you liked the episode, I'm always happy for a thumbs up or a positive recommendation on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to the podcast. And besides that, we also have a Web3 Compass Discord channel. The link is in the show notes or in the video description on YouTube. And yeah, have a nice day. Cheers.